In the middle of Old Zindau, a village hugged by rolling hills and soft, whispering grass, there was a market that felt like the heart of everything. The air was always thick with wonderful smells, roasted plantains, smoked fish, and fresh spices. It was here, among piles of bright cloths, shiny fruits, and the never-ending buzz of many voices, that a young girl named Olivia spent her days. Olivia was a mix of things. Her laugh was bright and clear, like tiny bells, but her mind was as strong and stubborn as the old baobab trees that stood tall in the fields. Her grandmother, Nana Asi, was a woman as wise and steady as the village well. She often watched Olivia with a knowing look in her eyes. "That girl," Nana Asi would sigh softly, "she'll learn, but it won't be easy for her. Olivia, you see, thought the old stories and warnings were just silly tales from long ago, whispered to make children behave. Spirits, Nana Asi?" Olivia would say, kicking at a small stone. Why would a spirit care about dusty market stalls when there are open fields and quiet rivers? She often wondered why people bothered with such old beliefs. She felt like she knew better, that the world was just what she saw with her own eyes. Nana Asi would just smile, a quiet smile that spoke of hundreds of years of knowing. "The market, my child, is a crossroads. It's where all paths meet, the living, the buying, the selling. And yes, also the unseen. Be very careful, Olivia. Especially about the old rules. Never, ever bend over and look between your legs in the market. If you peek into their world, you will surely find trouble you're not ready for." Nana Asi had tried to tell her many times, telling stories of others who had ignored the warnings, but Olivia's young mind saw them as just tales, not real dangers. Olivia, though, was young, full of energy, and very sure she was right. She'd heard all the fables since she was a baby, of drummers with no heads who played music at night, of women with eyes on their knees who danced under the moon. To Olivia, the market was only a place to buy things: plump yams, bright pieces of Adira cloth, and the sweetest, juiciest mangoes. It was a place of noise and bright colors, not a place where strange, hidden spirits hid. She loved the market's noise, the feeling of people all around her, the smell of food and sweat. It was real. One very hot market day, the sun beat down hard, making everyone seek shade under any cloth or tree they could find. Nana Asi was deep in a lively but friendly argument over the price of a basket of fresh groundnuts with a nearby seller. Olivia, holding her favorite old wooden doll, slowly walked away from her grandmother. Her eyes were drawn to something shiny hiding under a pile of dry palm leaves near Madame Zizi's stall. Madame Zizi was famous for her deep blue indigo dyes, and her stall was a beautiful mix of blues and purples. "It looks like a lost cowrie shell," Olivia thought, her heart doing a little happy jump. "Smooth and white, maybe even a whole string of them. It could be a treasure." She quickly looked back at Nana Asi, who was still busy talking, her back turned. Perfect. This was her chance. The warning about looking through her legs quickly popped into her mind, but she easily pushed it away. Just a quick look for a shell. What harm can it do? It's just a silly old superstition, a way to keep kids from wandering too far. She felt a small thrill of excitement and daring, ignoring that tiny voice of doubt, the one that sounded so much like Nana Asi. Olivia quickly bent over. She spread her legs wide, took a deep breath, and peered back through them for just a second, her fingers reaching out towards the shiny object. The world twisted. At first, it was just a blurry mix of upside-down sandals, the worn bottoms of woven baskets, and the dirty undersides of market tables. The usual loud market sounds became soft, as if she was listening underwater. But then, as her eyes tried hard to make sense of this upside-down world, the air itself seemed to ripple, like heat rising from the dry ground. The bright colors became much, much deeper, almost too strong, and the shadows seemed to pulse with a life of their own. It was like looking at the world through water that had suddenly turned thick and strange. Madame Zizi, who was usually a strong woman with a big laugh that carried across the market, now seemed to float an inch or two above the ground. Her feet, though moving, never quite touched the dusty earth. She moved with a strange, light step, like she wasn't quite real, and had an absurd laughter. This made a cold shiver run down Olivia's spine, a shiver that had nothing to do with the heat. A young boy she knew, who usually sold cola nuts with a cheeky smile, sat with his colonut in front of him. But his head wasn't on his shoulders, it seemed to float a little in front of him, like a lonely balloon, bobbing gently in his hands. Olivia gasped, a choked sound, her hand stopping just inches from the forgotten cowrie shell. The shell seemed dull and meaningless now. Then, from the very edge of her strange, twisted view, something else moved into sight, a tall, thin figure, covered in deep shadows that seemed to stick to it even in the bright sun, moved through the crowd. It wasn't walking like the other people in the market, it moved like smoke from a dying fire, its movements eerily quiet and smooth. As it came closer, Olivia saw them, not 2, but 6 arms. Each arm ended in long, sharp, claw-like fingers, moving gently like seaweed in water that wasn't there. And on its shoulders, where one human head should have been, there were 3 more heads, stacked one on top of the other. Each head had eyes that glowed with a faint, chilling light, like burning embers seen in the darkest night, and then most people, both buyers and sellers, seemed to be floating instead of walking. The air around felt suddenly very cold, even in the fierce heat of a market. It was a cold that reached deep inside her, a deep, cold fear, unlike anything she had ever known, grabbed Olivia. It wasn't just the normal fear a child feels, it was a strong, suffocating feeling that she had crossed an invisible, spiritual line. Olivia froze. She quickly tried to pull herself upright, her eyes wide and staring blankly, the cowrie shell completely forgotten. Its shine had turned to dullness. Like everything else she thought she knew, Nana Asi, who had finally finished her long talk about groundnuts, turned to find Olivia swaying, her face a shocking pale white, her eyes distant and filled with pure terror. Olivia! Oh no, Olivia? Child, what is it? You look as though you've seen the trickster spirit himself. Nana Asi quickly pulled Olivia close, feeling her trembling body. Olivia couldn't speak. The scary images were burned into her mind, clearer and more real than any dream. She clung to Nana Asi's colorful wrapper, shaking uncontrollably, her small body shivering as if in the deepest cold. For days that stretched into weeks, Olivia stayed quiet and kept to herself. She barely ate. She didn't want to play. When she closed her eyes, she didn't see the normal market she loved. Instead, she saw Madame Zizi's floating feet, the boy's detached head, and always the terrifying, 6-armed, 4-headed shadow figure. It was forever stuck in her memory, like a painful braid. She began having nightmares. In her sleep, the figures would glide towards her, their silent movements filling her with a dread that would wake her up screaming, and drenched in sweat. Nana Asi would sit with Olivia, holding her close, humming old lullabies, but even the songs couldn't chase away the terrible visions entirely. Olivia would draw pictures in the dirt with a stick, trying to make sense of what she saw, but the images were always too strange, too unsettling. The other children in the village noticed her change. Her laughter, once so bright, was gone. She wouldn't join their games, often sitting alone, staring at nothing. The vibrant market, which was once a place of great joy and wonder for Olivia, now held a strange, unsettling feeling. She saw the normal people and stalls, but her mind often flickered to the other layer, the hidden world she had seen out of her stubbornness. Every time she saw Madame Zizi, Olivia felt a cold chill. Even though she knew Madame Zizi was just a kind market woman, she still couldn't imagine she wasn't human. The boy who sold cola nuts, his head now firmly on his shoulders, made her heart jump with a strange mix of relief and fear. Nana Asi knew exactly what had happened, even without Olivia speaking. She brewed special teas for Olivia, sang powerful protection songs, and gently tried to draw her granddaughter back from the edge of what she had seen. Slowly, Olivia started listening more closely to Nana Asi's stories. She began listening to the quiet warnings of the village elders. She spent hours by Nana Asi's side, listening to tales not just of spirits, but of respect and of the delicate balance between their world and what lay beyond. She learned that some knowledge were just not meant for everyone, and some doors are best left shut. Curiosity, they say, kills the cat, and Olivia had learnt the hard way. The world, she now understood, was far more complex and mysterious than her young mind had ever imagined. It was a very long time before Olivia's bright, bell-like laughter truly rang out again. But when she did laugh, there was a new depth to it, a quiet wisdom born from a terrifying lesson. She never looked down between her legs again, not in the market, not anywhere. She also stopped questioning the old ways with such stubbornness. She became more thoughtful and more respectful of the unseen and more respectful to teachings of the elders, especially her grandmother's. For she had learned the hard way that some old stories are not just tales told by grandmothers to pass the time, they are vital warnings, strong guardians of unseen boundaries, and some secrets of the world, she now knew with chilling certainty, are best left alone. Olivia had seen too much, and in doing so, she had finally understood how little she truly knew.